Alex, aka Salubrious Snail, is another MTG video essay YouTuber whom I respect and I like a lot of his videos. Except this one. Now, there is nothing inherently wrong with a simple or basic deck, but I don't think it should be something to strive for. I feel like expanding your horizons and picking stranger cards and making more complicated decks is something every player should attempt to do. And I think that this will improve your gameplay and deck building. I wanted to break down all of Snail's arguments in this video and dispute each point, and then propose why you should actively make your deck a little bit more unique and complicated and fun. Maybe I should call him real quick. Yo, Alex, I'm doing a takedown of one of your videos. It's gonna make you want to delete that video.
Wait, what video? What is this about, Con?
Don't worry about it. Oh, real quick. Guy who lets me clickbait him in the thumbnail says what?
What?
Good enough. Okay, Alex's first argument in the video is that the card pool in EDH is massive. It's more of a card ocean. And to be fair, that is true. The large card pool is for sure part of the complexity of EDH. And it's actually even bigger than what Snail suggests. Yes, it does have a similar size to the vintage card pool, but Snail is actually underestimating the vastness of casual EDH because there are a lot more cards which are viable at a casual power level. This is because you can use Rule 0 to lower the power level below cEDH, and as you step away from that, the number of cards that are not too slow to play suddenly increases. This is another point where Snail and I agree. And before anybody in the comments says anything, yes, I do know that when you lower the power level, certain high power cards become non-viable since they're not allowed, quote unquote, due to Rule 0 or bracket restrictions, but the number of cards that are viable would still be way greater than losing out on mass land destruction. Alex then poses the question, does this complexity lead to the most fun for the most people? Is it best when everyone does something wacky with their deck? And my answer is yes. It's part of why EDH is the most popular format. Modern used to be the most wide open 60 card format where you could really build almost anything. And as Modern Horizon sets came out, brewing became more and more difficult, with the number of viable cards from the vast card pool sort of went away. And I think that that is part of the reason Modern's popularity began to fall. Ultimately, the most open and inviting format will have the most players. Even though Commander has become the de facto casual new player format, it doesn't mean the format has to be the least complex. There are a lot of formats out there which will always have less complexity than EDH, at least in terms of gameplay. Pauper, which only allows for commons, is almost always going to be the least complicated format, simply because these cards with walls of text on them are usually not allowed in Pauper. And even though Pauper is, in my opinion, the best 60 card format to play right now, it's not super popular. Nor is it used as the new player format, although maybe it should be. Barrier to entry is always going to be the most relevant part of a format and why new players are drawn to it. And EDH has precons, which are starter decks, and you don't need to clear a knowledge check by knowing the meta. You can just build anything. That's why Commander, even with its complexity, will draw new players because it's easier to get into. I don't think the complexity is pushing that many players away. Hey Alex, before I continue going through your arguments, can I ask you a quick question?
Go for it.
Do you know who today's sponsor is?
I might have a guess based on the podcast.
You're right, it's Card Castle, the easy way to store your collection digitally. You're able to scan your cards and then put them into a digital database. This lets you quickly and easily find what is in your collection. Additionally, you can sort by anything you want, rarity, color, whatever. And you can even make your own tags, like a trade binder tag, so you know everything that's in one binder, or everything that's in a specific box. That's my personal favorite way to use it, is I have boxes of somewhat playable cards, and I just scan those and I know what is in the box, so I don't buy duplicates of cards when I don't need to. You can sign up and start scanning your cards for free today. You get 1,000 scans on a free account. Although if you use my link in the description, you'll get 1 free month of premium access, which gives you a bunch of other perks. Thank you very much to Card Castle for sponsoring the video. You know what's really funny is I literally told them that I was just gonna ambush you with the sponsor segment while we're recording.
Good.
As a bit, and they thought it was funny, so that's what I'm doing.
Nice.
Snail then talks about how Casual Commander as a format is slow and grindy. So naturally, there will be a lot of crap on the board with lots of words to read. Now, complexity creep is its own issue. The game and cards have just become more complicated and wordy as time has gone on. That can be its own video. But due to the slow nature of the idealized casual EDH game, you just can't have a clean board state. The game has twice the number of players than most formats, and twice the life. Unless one deck completely destroys the whole table, there's no way to have a low complexity EDH game. There's always going to be a lot of things going on. Another point Alex mentions is that players might not know how other decks try to win. Maybe because you haven't seen the commander before, or you haven't seen a synergy piece before. Now, I half agree with this point. For some really obscure commanders like Tanawa, sure, you might not know how their goofy land destruction combo works, but you can assume things about most modern commanders. Fumulus the Infestation has a lot of text on it, and isn't a super popular commander. But even a new player can probably make some assumptions about what the deck does, even if they don't know specific cards. Is there not joy in learning about a new deck or seeing something for the first time? I mean, where's the joy, Alex?
I mean, maybe there's some joy to that, but if that's joy in EDH, then I would say it's already an ecstatic, giddy format.
He also says that EDH has a lot more unique cards because decks are Singleton. So you're not only dealing with the best version of a card, but the second best and third best version of that effect. This is another reason that simplifying Commander is an exercise in futility. Each deck just has a lot of unique cards in it, and there's not a way around that. Snail then complains that learning new cards on the fly uses up mental energy when you try to find out what they do. I guess that's true, but this is a game of mental energy. It's a strategic card game. Again, with cards, people can assume things. The Temporal Anchor is a goofy card you probably haven't seen anyone cast before, but even a newer player can read it and assume that you're going to play this with other cards that want to scry. I think a new player can use their imagination to invent a card that does scry and assume how it operates with the anchor. In fact, I think I can prove this right now. Let's play Stump That Snail. I challenged my patrons to show me a commander and a synergy piece that goes with it. I want to show you the cards and see if you can intuit how the pieces work together within the context of the list. The first commander is Cross Defense Contractor, and the synergy piece is Magosi the Waterfall. Do you have any thoughts as to what the goal or intention of adding Magosi to Cross is?
I guess maybe goading things until your next turn, or doing things until your next turn is better if you can cause yourself to skip your next turn.
Yes, my patron specifically was like, I goad everything or as much as I can, skip my next turn, so it's goaded twice in a row, and then I take 2 turns in a row with the Magosi afterwards. Next is Samut, Voice of Dissent, and Mangara of Korondor.
Yeah, I imagine that's where you would respond to the tap trigger, untap it, and then tap it again to get 2 things exiled.
Bingo. Yep, maybe that one was a little too easy. Next is Kess, Dissonant Mage, and the Scarab God.
I guess maybe if they both involve graveyards, so if you're running like a heavy-duty self-mill package, that would benefit both cards.
Yeah, basically. This patron basically just said that it lets them have a board on like a slower control deck and synergize with the self-mill. And there's one more from special guest 3-3 Elk. The commander is Emrakul the Promised End, and the synergy piece is Urza's Saga.
I mean, it's an enchantment land that puts itself into your graveyard.
You got it. That's two types. It puts itself in the graveyard.
Yeah.
Or 3 types, right? Or no, 2. Yeah, 2 types.
Yeah.
Puts itself in the graveyard. Additionally, Elk mentioned a specific card that it searches up, which I had never seen before. I don't know if you want to guess what the card is before I send it. I've never seen this card before.
I don't know. I feel like I would want Soul Ring. Yeah, Gerard's Hourglass Pendant.
Wait, you know this? I've never heard of this card before.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's pretty good for sure.
They don't get to take the extra turn from the Emrakul.
I wouldn't immediately make that connection, but I mean that seems pretty good.
I know this was like a little bit where I tried to, show him two cards, and Alex is a very smart player who's been playing for a long time, so I wasn't expecting to like bamboozle him here, but I just wanted to show that I actually do think it's a little difficult to genuinely find two pieces of your deck that are very confusing to a seasoned player as to why they're in the deck. I think most players, at the very least, as long as you've played a little bit, can sort of put the pieces together. Some may say that increasing card diversity makes it harder for new players to keep up. And by some, I mean Snail in his video. But I think part of this is on the player using the card. And Alex does explain this in his solutions towards the end of the video, where he talks about announcing a game-ending card versus a random other card you cast, revealing hidden information for longer than you want to. I'll give a few examples of this. In a recent game, I had a card bounce to my hand, and when somebody asked how many cards are in my hand, I said 5, and then also revealed the bounced card because they should have already known that. And I tried to reduce the mental burden on my opponents because it's casual commander. Another example would be in my mono-white control deck, I'm currently playing Goblin Charbelcher with Endless Horizons. These two allow me to instantly nuke a player out of the game. My deck is only playing basic planes, so the Horizons empties them all out of my deck, and then the Belcher will hit somebody for like 50 damage. I wouldn't just cast these two cards without like explaining what's going on. I think that if you're playing something that is a bit weird and it's going to take someone out of the game, you should let them know about that while it's on the stack before you just say, hey, you lose. Alex then talks about how cEDH has the opposite issue, where the power is so high that the card pool has essentially been limited because there are less cards that are viable, and that this is a boon for commander players or new players who want a more simplified experience. And yeah, this is one more reason cEDH is cool and awesome, and players should learn it. Seriously, if you think EDH is full of weird cards and mishmash power levels and just want a simpler play experience, competitive commander is actually the way to go. Alex then says below cEDH there are lots of strong casual decks, and Snail suggests that as decks get more powerful, lacking knowledge becomes a bigger issue. And again, he's right. Lack of knowledge can become more of an issue when there are more power plays. Going back to the Heliod example, not knowing the Charbelcher situation will lead to you losing the game. So not knowing what a card does is a lot more meaningful if that card is the last piece in an obscure infinite combo. Alex then continues to say higher power decks will have lots of random off-meta combos or locks when you're playing with random players. But do you? Are there really that many weird combos? So yes, you can make a less compact and more silly combo, but the key cards in most infinite combos are actually the same. Sack outlets that produce mana, cards that put counters on creatures entering, things that let you tap artifacts for mana, are ultimately not very common cards. If we cut out Phyrexian Altar and Ashnod's Altar, how many infinites are there in Aristocrats' decks? And how many of those are really compact, fast, and powerful? Ultimately, if you're not using Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar, your combos are probably not nearly as powerful. And the more cards that are in your combo and the slower it is, the easier the combo is to disrupt, and the harder it is to pull off the combo. The number of specific types of cards you need to know about to stop combos is actually pretty minimal. Things that produce mana, things that are infinite sack outlets, things that cause things to enter with something or without something, that's kind of it. These types of cards that sort of modify the rules of things are the backbones to most combos. If you know that, you can see almost any combo coming from a mile away. This is where I talk about Rule 0. If you think a combo will 100% ruin your day, then part of that is on you to talk about that in the Rule 0 discussion, or to play more removal. Also with brackets, which I know didn't exist when Alex made the video, but I do think they help you use the language to avoid combo issues, fast combos, etc. Now, in your original video, you talk about like pickup games and Rule 0 conversation. I'm curious, do you feel like brackets have changed your mind on any of the points that you said in that video?
Not all that much, in the sense that in that video I already distinguished between mid power and high power, which have more or less been replaced by the brackets.
I do agree with you very much. Like, for lower power levels, when you don't know a synergy, it's probably not going to lose you the game. Like in bracket 2, you're not going to be like, oh, I didn't know how this worked or synergized with the list, so it's over for me, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess with brackets, at least you have a direct list you can reference of what is and what isn't going to be involved in the format. Although I would say that most of it's not going to be meaningfully significant on decreasing information density because it's not actually restricting the types of play patterns, just a handful of cards. It's not going to restrict, can you see combos? Can you see stacks? Can you see X, Y, and Z? It's just restricting, oh, you don't see this specific combo card. You just don't see this specific stacks piece. You don't see this specific powerful engine.
Now, if you know me, you know I'm a big fan of the play more removal angle. Snail, however, says that doesn't quite work here. Holding up removal fails, according to him, because if you don't know what your opponent is doing, then you might waste a turn if you held up your removal for an unknown potential threat. He compares two situations. One where he knows a friend's deck and is able to discern that they 100% don't have enough mana for their combo, or they only have one card in the deck that would win the game from the situation. And then the second situation is at a pickup game where an opponent could win with this amount of mana, or maybe they need more, or maybe they don't have a combo in their deck at all, and it's just a big mystery, so holding up removal is more of a risk. But I would argue that's a really rare case in general. Even with friends whose decks I've seen before, I'm rarely in a situation where I can know for certain how close they are to winning. And with non-regular playgroups, it is impossible to know what's in their deck unless they literally tell you. But that's also how the entire game operates. You don't have perfect knowledge. What is the chance that this spell gets countered? What is the chance your commander will tank a board wipe? And what's the chance that holding up your removal here is a waste because they're actually not even close to winning? I don't know. You're going to have to use context clues on the game and your game knowledge to help figure that out. And sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes you tap out and your opponent played the Crater Hoof Behemoth. It happens. But lots of things happen in Commander. It's a crazy, wacky format. It's almost impossible to narrow that down unless everybody gives you their deck list. Alex then talks about how you can keep track of some common combo cards, like I mentioned, the altars that give mana, but if people play weird and wacky things, that becomes harder to track. But I think you could still intuit a lot of these things. If your opponent is playing a blink deck and they have something that does 1 damage when it enters the battlefield, you can probably assume it's a combo piece. Since beyond dealing 1 damage randomly, why else would you play such a bad card, other than an outlet for infinitely flickering? Now, of course, their deck could be bad, and maybe you don't need to worry, but usually synergies are pretty obvious if you take the time to look. And this isn't a game of speed. You have all the time in the world. Now, Alex says that his video is broadly applicable because there are lots of semi-regular and non-regular playgroups out there, which I agree with, but I think that's why you should go with what I'm saying. There are lots of irregular playgroups. You play with your locals at a game store, you don't know who they are, you play at a convention, blah, blah, blah. So you should learn play patterns. You should learn what common combo and synergy pieces look like in the abstract, as opposed to trying to memorize 1,000 cards. And then if you go into a game knowing anything might happen, you're going to be a lot happier in the long run. It's about managing expectations. I think a lot of people expect that a game should run X long or Y long, and that's totally fine if that's what you want. But you should expect that your opponents are going to do things to win the game at some point, and they don't need your permission to play these weird cards. You should just expect that your opponent is going to do something you haven't seen before. There's like a billion cards. And if you come to terms with that, I think you're going to have more fun. Towards the end of his video, Alex then says, perhaps you should run more simple, commonly played strategies or cards or decks, because it might be easier to have players keep track of things. And that is true, but it can be hard to do and potentially boring to pin yourself in a box. You can play a Relentless Rats deck. That is very simple. It is easy for your opponents to keep track of. Everybody knows what's going on. But this shouldn't be the end goal of all of your brewing for your entire EDH career. I'm going to tell you why you should embrace complexity. Not only do I think there isn't a case for simpler decks, I really do think it's the opposite. you should embrace the wildness of the format and make even sillier decks. You must become more silly and crazy. I know that Alex likes to skip the best in class cards for his decks and play more niche, weird budget options. And I think this is commendable. I really like embracing synergy. I love playing cards that are strange and synergistic that people don't really see very often. Salvaging Station is one of my favorite cards of all time, and a lot of people don't realize the synergy it can have with a board wipe and a card draw bauble. Using Jessica to boost the damage of a creature that you goad is really funny. It lets me do a crazy amount of burst damage by goading a creature the next player in turn order has, and is a synergy most people don't expect when I play Jessica in the command zone. They usually think I'm gonna buff my things. And I could go on and on. EDH is about playing fun and wacky things. It's literally how the format was designed. And don't get me wrong, I love cEDH. I think it's amazingly fun, but I also love that in Casual Commander, the amount of viable cards has just increased drastically. You just see a lot more new stuff. I think there's a ton of joy to be had by digging through some Commander set you missed and finding something that could be perfect for your deck. I'll do it right now. I'll go to Scryfall and search for the Lost Caverns of Ixalan Commander set. I'm going to filter for not reprints and look for something interesting. And look, a Promise of Aclazots. This is a 2-mana populate engine. It lets you sacrifice small tokens into larger ones. That's kind of neat. And the adventure part lets you set up a bigger token to help out if you haven't gotten your token copy of something huge in play. This could be really fun in like a Cabal Profiteering Mayor deck, and it's run in 0% of possible decks on EDH Rec. I doubt most people have seen it. I hadn't seen the card until I looked it up for this video right now. Commander is meant to surprise you, and you are supposed to play the unique playable cards and show a player something cool you came up with. Freedom of expression has always been a key tenet of EDH. Again, it's totally fine if you want to put every dragon you can think of in a deck and make the simplest turn dragon sideways deck you can possibly imagine. That's totally fine. I just think that when you are brewing and trying to make decks, I would strive for trying to come up with something, trying to dig around, find a weird card that speaks to you. Just to be clear, if you play a more complicated deck that has a lot of triggers, the most important thing to do is be patient. You want to make sure everyone is able to understand what is going on and when they can interact. Additionally, make sure you goldfish your deck so you know what you're going to do at the very least. I love silly complicated decks, but if the pilot doesn't know how to drive, then I agree it can be a bit of a problem. Thank you so very much for watching. This was my argument against simple decks, pro complicated decks. I think Commander's very fun, and I really love digging around and finding weird cards. And I think you should too. Thank you very much to my patrons for suggesting cards for this. Thank you very much to Alex for recording lines for this. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Now, the funny thing with this video is I feel like you kind of mostly agree, right? Like at the end of your video, you actually bring up the fact that Commander was designed to be sort of complicated and full of unique individual cards.
Yeah, and I think, I think that's the reason I don't give firm rules about you shouldn't, play funky stuff in your deck. You shouldn't get fun with your card choices. You shouldn't just cram your deck full of staples. That's what I think it's all about, degrees of complexity. Something can be complex, but that doesn't necessarily justify adding a whole bunch more complexity to it.
Now, with that said, do you think because most people don't actually finish videos all the way to the end, probably or might have skipped the end of your video and actually think that your opinion is legitimately to reduce as much complexity as you can in EDH. And then since people don't finish, my videos all the way through, do you think people will actually think that I have like beef with you?
I don't know. But honestly, I don't particularly care what people think if they're not going to watch the video to the end. People watch videos for different reasons, and if their reason is to get my full thoughts on something, they'll watch to the end. And if they're just watching it as background noise, they can not finish it. Whatever, up to them.
I think it'll just be funny if we see any comments that clearly didn't get to this point.
we are beefing. This is the case actively as we speak.
All right, well then let's once and for all just finish it off. How about from this point onward, no more beef between us? We're still friends. You don't have to delete your video.
Okay, I guess if you put it that way, I won't delete my video and I'll stop beefing.
What are you two talking about? We need to record the podcast.